get started momentarily. I'm going to, we've got the recording going. Okay, great. So good of everyone to be here. Thank you so much for coming. We are here for Dovetail Learning's webinar on escaping perfectionism and looking how resilience can help us out of that, through it, maybe even closer into it so we can see it and understand it and transform it. My name is Chuck Fisher. I'm the Director of Transformational Learning at Dovetail Learning, and I'm a transpersonal psychologist, which is the study of human well-being from cross-cultural perspectives. Also a founder and director of Dovetail Learning and an author of this work called We Are Resilient. So good of everyone to be here. Just gotta fix one thing on my end. There we go. Just a little bit more about Dovetail. Dovetail is a nonprofit. Our mission is to strengthen resilience in all people so that we can help build a world of kind, connected human beings. And we do that through our work in education and healthcare and with families. And all of our work is licensed, as you can see on the bottom of this slide, by the Creative Commons, which is an open education resource. It means you can download it for free, share it, modify it, and use it according to the license. We Are Resilient is the approach that we're going to use today to look at perfectionism. And we like to think of it looking at the heart of resilience, which is how to cultivate the strength, the inner strength that lets us lead a joyful life. There's a lot of territory in between where we might be right now and the joyful life that we want, because the human condition is that there's a lot of suffering, and we've all been through a lot of experiences that can inform our way of being, our sense of self, and we're going to look today at how perfectionism is one component of how we experience life and ourselves. So we'll do that through a few ways. First, by presencing, which is a practice that we'll use, and it's a concept that I'll introduce, if you're not familiar with it, as a entry point into understanding and deepening and being in relationship with ourselves, with life, with perfectionistic tendencies, and with the impact of those. I'll do a very brief overview of the We Are Resilient approach, which is a comprehensive approach. We'll just use a few parts of it today to illuminate this exploration and discovery around perfectionism. And part of that is about healing the wounds that bind us, which is the task, really, of getting beyond perfectionism, getting close enough to what the heck is going on in here that causes me to feel like I've got to do everything and I've got to do it right. And if I don't, I feel bad about myself. So that's the basics. And that's what we're going to explore today. Before we get into it any further, I'll just say that this is being recorded, and I will be sending out both the recording and the slide deck that you'll be seeing today. So the first piece of this is what we endearingly call presencing. And it's about walking our talk. It's about using the methods and practices and skills that allow us to get closer to what is true. And that is the path to understanding our perfectionism. getting closer to what is true. So we'll do that right here at the beginning. I'm going to ring this singing bowl and just guide us into a simple breathing practice so that we can notice what we notice. So beginning with the singing bowl. Invite you, no matter where you are in your day, to just take this pause. Maybe defocus your eyes onto one spot or allow your eyes to close. Just presencing self, presencing state of being. Noticing how tense you are, how relaxed you are, how worried or excited you may be. Just bringing all of our awareness to our body, mind, spirit, the unity really of how and who we are in this moment. And just allowing whatever is present to be present. And with 3 rings of the bell, invite everyone back to opening your eyes and being present to this webinar and noticing what we notice. Noticing what we notice. If you're open to chatting in your state of being right now, your current state of being, encourage you to do that. Just to chat in a word or a phrase. My word is noticing. And there are many other words that come to mind. Just in a relaxed, noticing, present state of being. And noticing is what this work is all about. Presencing comes from the research and discoveries made. Thank you, Jill, adding in the word ready to go, ready to learn, ready to be on this journey. As I was saying, presencing comes from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology through a body of work that they call Theory U. It's also called presencing. You can look it up using the Presencing Institute. And what they've discovered through a massive amount of research, an incredible body of work, is that being human, being fully human, allowing ourselves to be in a way with life that is functional requires pausing and stopping and listening and letting go of preconceived ideas, letting go of what we thought this webinar was going to be, or how we might have showed up today, or what's happened already today, and just noticing by observing ourself, our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior. Am I animated? Am I relaxed? Am I anticipating? Am I impatient? Whatever it is that we're noticing, allowing that to be, and that is the act of presencing. Presencing, listening with the heart, being here in this moment, now, with this material, so that we can let emerge whatever's going to come, whatever learning we're going to have, whatever insights we might see, whatever depth we might reach. Letting it come is about seeing what's emerging and then creating from our wholeness a way forward into how we might want to be. And our state of being includes a wide spectrum of the human experience. We like to call it our storms and our miracles. All of the storms that we experience every day. Gotten a little tiff with my wife this morning. I had a plant that I planted yesterday. It looked like it was about to die because it was so dry. There's the little things, and then there's, of course, the huge things, whether it's a pandemic or an illness or a friend, a loss. We live with storms as part of our human condition. And right beside them, we live with all of the miracles of life. The miracle of being alive. I get to look out my window at these beautiful giant redwood trees because I live in Northern California, an hour and a half north of San Francisco. One of my favorite resilience practices is getting up very early before dawn and going for a walk down my country road and just looking at the stars in the sky and the light just beginning to come up in the east. We like to say resilience is how we weather our storms and notice our miracles. So if I'm in a work mode where all I'm doing is work, busying, rushing, having to get everything just right, that's one of my storms. And in the midst of that, if I don't stop and, the old saying, smell the flowers, but really see the smile on someone's face, see the flower that's coming up in the spring, see the sunlight as it dances in the leaves. All of these are both what makes up our life. And we tend to tip one way or the other. We'll stay in our storms and pretend like we're a victim. That's very common for perfectionists because we're working so hard to get things just right that it wears us out. And we might miss some of the miracles, or we can lean the other way and have a spiritual override and pretend that everything's fine when actually it's not. And what we're missing is the feeling, the grief, the sadness, the truth of our storms. And what we're going to do today is look at this approach to well-being that we call We Are Resilient, and see how it can inform us about our experience of ourselves and any tendency we might have to perfectionism, working too hard. Workaholism is part of perfectionism. But first, let's just look at resilience. We love this quote from Ann Masson, University of Minnesota. Resilience is our nature. It doesn't come from rare and special qualities. It is the magic of being human. And as I've already said, all of the ways that we get thrown off balance and all of the ways that we then bring ourselves on balance. I was on a webinar this morning where someone was talking about, your finger gets a little cut in it and your finger heals. It's natural. It heals. Well, our emotions get a little thrown off base, and it's natural that we come back into balance. We find our center again after a while. And we might have a giant trauma or difficulty or life-threatening disease, and our natural state is always to move back towards equilibrium. Back towards equilibrium. That's what we're striving for. And at Dovetail, what we do is we look at the human condition through these lenses, what we call human connections. We have a reactive resilience. These are types of resilience, of our human connected resilience. How we react, our reactive patterns. Our personal resilience is how we get ourselves centered, bring ourselves back to balance. Our resilient mindsets, how we think, are part of that. The relationships that we have are what we call relational resilience, which are our connecting skills. And that leads to group resilience, which are collaborating skills, and cultural resilience, which is that intergenerational transmission of beliefs and attitudes and behaviors that inform us. And all of these things together inform how we are and how we experience ourself, our state of being, our ability to be resilient, and our ability to notice our perfectionism and how that all works. One more slide on the approach, and then we'll start exploring perfectionism. So we break this up into 3 parts. The resilient mindsets of curiosity, choice, and courage. We'll be looking at how those apply. The patterns of the cultural patterns and protective patterns, so I just named as cultural and reactive resilience. And then 3 sets of skills for centering, connecting, and collaborating, which are, again, about personal resilience, relational with another person resilience, and group resilience, or community or organizational resilience. Now, as I said, we're not going to go into all of this by any means. It's a pretty vast territory, but check out our website. You can download material on all of it, and there are many webinars previously recorded that you can see about different aspects of this approach. So into the heart of the work, let's just look at perfectionism and what it is. This is from Brene Brown, and her book, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, the Myth of Perfectionism or something. Got it here somewhere. Just want to pull that up. The Gift of Imperfection is the name of her work. So perfectionism. Healthy striving towards whatever we're doing, our work, getting it right, is self-focused. Healthy striving is self-focused. How can I improve? How do I want to improve? Maybe I want to improve myself by doing less. That's been a big course of my learning, is how to do less and less and less with higher quality, but without perfection driving it. And she goes on to say that perfectionism is about earning approval and acceptance from others. So we have this self-other focus, self-other dichotomy. When we can come home to ourselves and be with what is true here in our hearts, in our intuition, in our minds, we can have healthy striving for learning and improvement. Perfectionism tips us into trying to do things for others, and that was born inside of me right at the beginning through a cultural pattern, which I'll call family pattern, trying to do everything right for my dad. And that was the beginning of my perfectionism. It's like I would get slammed. I lived in an alcoholic family. It was very difficult. My father had a lot of rage, and if I didn't mow the lawn right, or put the dishes away right, or even be quiet enough right, I would get hurt. And so I learned to have a hypervigilance around getting his approval and acceptance, because I wanted to belong. And Brene Brown goes on to say perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system. Well, it's certainly self-destructive. My whole life I've had this whole protective pattern of needing to get things right and do things right. And, it was a whole thing about busying and rushing and doing too much and trying to do it all and thinking it's all up to me. I mean, it's just like a crazy system that's self-destructive. It's an addictive belief system. Addictions keep us from our feelings. So the more we think we have to work hard to get something done and be good enough and right enough, we're actually suppressing our emotions and our feelings. All addictive systems suppress emotion, whether it's a drug or alcohol or a numbing. We numb just as much by being addicted to watching TV, so that we can't feel. We numb by working too hard, by busying and rushing all the time and not having space and time to be with what is. So let's look at some of the impacts of perfectionism. The first is, of course, stress, because it takes so much darn hard work to try and get things right all the time. There's a dimension of relational dynamics that are going on inside of this. We all have a need for love and belonging. We have a need for having good boundaries. We have a need for authenticity. But all of that can get sideswiped by our perfectionism. One of the impacts is we have difficult emotions: worry, frustration, anxiety. Have I got it right? Am I on, or am I going to get in trouble if I don't get it right? All these systems of worry and thinking, and it brings us to an enormous exhaustion, which is burnout. Burnout is actually depression. So there's a depression of a sense of aliveness and joy that comes from perfectionism. And I love this quote. It may be the most important quote that I use today, from Gabor Mate. Our need for belonging always trumps our need for authenticity. So we put ourselves aside in order to do what we think we're supposed to do, to get it right, to be good enough, to belong, to be accepted, to have others' approval, all of these things. And it is exhausting. So just for a moment, if you have any of this stuff, I invite you, along with myself, to have immense self-compassion. Self-compassion for just what it's like to do all this. Self-compassion for the families we grew up in and the culture that causes us to think we need to look right and act right and be right and strive more and do all these things for self-worth. When in fact, we have a universal right to be ourselves, to be authentic, to have healthy boundaries, and to learn to love and know that we do belong. We belong by the very nature of our life. And so with that, let's explore a little bit more about how we're impacted, and then we'll look at what are the ways to move forward and through it. We like to use stress and stress reactions as a way to calibrate how we're doing, where we are. And so we have a set of these. We've used these often, so you may be familiar with it if you've been part of our work. So, in a way, perfectionism is losing my cool. Although I might act like I've got it all together. But man, if I'm really on something and I'm on a task and I think I have to have it perfect, I will let go of everything else, drop away any other needs that my family might have, my wife might have. I mean, I have a history of perfectionism and working too hard and holding down more jobs than I actually needed because I thought I had to do it to, be the right, breadwinner, et cetera, and then, working too late, getting up too early to go to work, all these things get in the way of being with my family. So just the act of thinking I need to get it all done and it's up to me and I have to do it, is an act of losing my cool. There isn't necessarily a stress event, but the event is I think I have to do it all. And that puts me into my protective patterns. It can cause me to get very high on the stress meter. Afterwards, when I finally let go, I can calm down, but there's often a depletion. This is the way our neurological system works. We can get better at it by noticing our protective patterns. And we're going to look at protective patterns in a moment. But protective patterns are the way we react, the different kinds of ways we react, our reactions to whatever's happening. And getting better at it is about opening our minds, making space to really wonder and assess and begin to choose, well, what can I do differently? How do I let myself calm down? And eventually we get to the point where we can anticipate, oh, here's a project I'm doing and my tendency is to be in perfectionism and to work as hard as I can. So what do I need to do to counteract that, to anticipate it, to get myself balanced before I start my day, to take a walk in the morning, to meditate for 5 minutes, to have a cup of coffee with a friend, to give myself permission to have that time, to take what I need to nurture myself, to remain centered so I can stay in the zone. Now, it turns out that the human condition is that our state of being is all over the place all the time. It's going up and down. It's all about emotions. And emotions really matter because it's the emotional tenor, the emotional movement and changes and shifts that we're actually experiencing about our state of being when we're either in perfectionism or in the flow of life. And I love this quote from Oren J. Sofer, who's a Buddhist teacher. He says, how we handle emotions, our own and others, can make or break a day, a relationship, our body. How we handle emotions. So just for a moment in the middle of this webinar, consider for yourself, what is your relationship to perfectionism, to stress, to your own well-being? We're all on the path. You wouldn't be in this webinar if you aren't already on the path. But just be honest for a moment with yourself. What's your relationship to it? Am I stuck in it? Am I working at it? Am I not sure exactly what it is, how it's working? Is my well-being something I put on the back burner? Is it something I really give myself permission, invitation, opening to my well-being? What it is that helps me be well. And with that as a frame, with that as a context, let's look together at our reactive resilience, which is what gives us our protective patterns. So we all react to things all the time. It's the human condition. There's no one that escapes reactions. They're emotional. It's what happens. And at Dovetail, what we've done is we call them protective patterns because they protect us. They also cause harm. We'll look at that. And we've identified these 6 ways of the ways we distrust and we're hypervigilant, hyper caretaking of others, the ways we avoid or defend ourselves or turn aggressive and start attacking. These are all reactive patterns. And there are many more, but they can all be distilled down into these 6. And they emerge when we feel unsafe or vulnerable. So let's take a look at them. And we're going to focus specifically on one. But distrusting, how do I doubt myself or others? In my perfectionism, it might be like, do I doubt that I'm ready? Now, distrusting is good for me because if I doubt that I'm ready, I can get more ready for this webinar. I can set aside the time that I needed to put the slides together and the thoughts and connect the dots. Distrusting myself helped me get ready. It was good for me. If I distrust myself too much, then I'm totally stressed out. I'm okay with that because I love this work so much. Was able to just say, yeah, I know I got this, but I needed the time. So distrusting is normal. We distrust ourselves for good reasons, and we distrust others for good reasons. Since this webinar is about perfectionism, we'll look at more at the lens of ourselves. Second is hypervigilance. Now that's probably the biggest one, I think, for perfectionism. Am I on constant high alert? So let's take a little time to look a little more closely at perfectionism and how it can help. So hypervigilance. How can hypervigilance help us being on high alert? I think I've already mentioned, it can help me by noticing what my dad's mood was. I'm on hypervigilance. It can help me notice what my boss is needing from me, or my colleagues, or my family. There's a certain amount of vigilance. I want all of that. But hypervigilance, it can help identify a threat early. It can help me provide time to be prepared. It can help me get things right. It can also harm me. There's this whole sense of fear of not doing it right that goes along with it. It limits my connection because I'm so self-absorbed. And it, of course, leads to perfectionism. So hypervigilance is one of the 6 protective patterns. Hyper-caretaking and avoiding. So do I over-prioritize others at my expense? So am I trying to be the perfect caretaker, the perfect good one, the one that's better than, that I do things for other people that they can do for themselves? Hyper caretaking makes me feel like I belong and like I'm contributing and like I'm powerful even, but it wears me out. It causes other people not to be able to have their own competence if I do something for someone else that they can do for themselves. Avoiding is one of my favorite. I love to avoid. We all have to avoid things all the time. Do I withdraw or retreat? Do I avoid as a way of managing my perfectionism? Maybe I'm so tight on having to get something done that I just need to avoid it for a few days. Maybe that's good for me. I can, there's a helpful aspect to avoiding. It gives me time to get ready to do it. It gives me space to walk away from something that I'm getting stressed about. But of course, avoiding then causes a delay, and then I might have to work harder to get it done. So if we think about it in this whole perspective of workaholism and perfectionism, where does avoiding fit in there? And then the last 2, defending and attacking. Do I act like others are constantly judging me? Well, yes, all the time. If I'm a perfectionist because I'm afraid of what they're going to think if I don't get it right. And am I quick to be on the offensive? Well, when I'm stressed out, I do, yes. And these are natural tendencies. Some people are more defenders, avoiders and defenders. Some are more attackers and hypervigilant. You just have to find your own sense of, yes, I have reactive patterns. What's my style? Am I more of an avoider or an attacker? And we all have protective patterns. So if you notice one that is calling you, go ahead and put it in the chat. I will use the chat as a poll. Am I more distrusting, or am I more hypervigilant, or am I a defender? That's great. Hyper caretaking, Layla. That is so one of mine also. It's also very common to women, culturally, historically, intergenerationally. We're learned to be hyper caretakers, attackers, defenders. If it can be a family pattern. All of these things. The beauty of it is we get to see that this is okay. It's part of the human condition. I have a protective pattern. It helps me feel safe, and I just want to be able to look at it. So when we think about responses to stress, and you're all familiar with the fight, flight, freeze continuum, the other option is to face. This comes from Grace LeConte. When I discovered, I was so excited because it really gives the opening to, well, yes, instead of having a response to stress, I can also have an authentic response to look at it and be curious and what's going on. And that's where personal resilience comes into play. So let's use the remaining time to just look at resilience. What is it? How do we get closer to what's happening for ourselves? And we like to say personal resilience is strengthened using our mindsets, resilient mindsets, and our centering skills. So let's start with the resilient mindsets. The first one is curiosity. Curiosity, having a mindset of curiosity. Feel what that's like in your body to move in towards, lean into curiosity. What can I learn about this issue of perfectionism and know about it? Choice. We have choices. What's an empowering choice that would help me to back away a little bit, to let go, to notice when I'm really hanging on to my perfectionism and where I can let it go or put it on pause or take it and put it on the shelf, or at least overnight so I can have a good night's sleep, and then I can come back and pick it up off the shelf in the morning. And courage, what allows me to be true to my heart, be true to my heart. So in curiosity, in that discovering, what is it that helps us to pause, to notice, and to wonder, so that we can really lean into discovery. And it's about the idea of looking more closely. I love these images of these kids questioning what's really going on here. Well, use our curiosity to what's really going on in here inside of me that I'm so pressured to feel like I have to get everything right, when in fact our given state is that we are already right. We are already right. We live a life, and how we are and who we are is perfect, even in its incompletion. And the second one is choice, which is about noticing and understanding and deciding. I have a choice. Okay, I notice. Okay, I'm getting up at 6:30 every morning and I'm not spending time with my kids. I have a choice. What empowering choice can I make when I understand that it's being driven by this need that I have to belong, to be accepted, to be approved of? And choice can come from that place in between. We have to pause and see what's the cause. So between the stressor and the stress is the space in between. And we can just slow down enough to rest in that space for a little bit, so we can take that big question mark and ask ourselves, what's an empowering choice here? And then lastly, courage, feeling, listening, feeling into the kind of person I want to be, which is the word courage comes from the root word core, which means heart. We define courage as following our heart. So it's listening in to what really matters. You know, in our poetry and our language, we know that when we say, when I listened to my heart, then I knew what to do, or something was so disheartening, or what's the heart of the matter. This is all about courage. Courage is the heart. And just a technical piece here, a little bit of science, the body-mind unity. You know, we have this body-mind split in Western culture. It actually doesn't work that way. Look at Ellen Langer's work at Harvard. She's been studying the body-mind connection for 40 years, and she says there's nothing to connect. It's a unity, body and mind. And this illustration here of the vagus nerve and how it connects the brain and the heart and the gut, which are the three brain centers. We now know we have a brain in the cranium, we have a brain in the heart. All the same neurons and ganglia exist inside our heart, which also exist in our gut. We always say we knew it in our gut. You know, we get really stressed out. What happens? We get diarrhea. That's the gut. You know, there's all of these connections. It's just complete unity. So when we think about courage to be with our perfectionism, it is about feeling what my heart knows to be true, listening in to my inner wisdom. Notice this is self-oriented. I'm coming home to myself, to my being, to speak and be in ways that honor my values and my boundaries and my truth, not what I think the world wants me to do, or my parents want me to do, or my boss wants me to do. I mean, there's, you know, lots of complexity to all of this, but there we have it. Let's move into the centering skills. I'm just going to spotlight one. We have a whole body of work on all of these centering skills, what awareness and noticing is, and how to distinguish it, how breath and breathing changes us neurologically, biologically, spiritually. The centering skill of letting go, which we're going to look at for a minute in a moment. The use of gratitude, which we know is one of the most exalted emotions, and when we move into gratitude, it shifts us completely. How to reframe something from, oh, well, I have to do this to get to do it, or maybe I want to do it, or maybe I want to do it, but not right now, and I have all this choice. Well, okay, I have a project. I'm not going to get it done in time. All I have to do to have integrity is to let my team know I'm not going to get it done in time. There's no thing on me. It's life. This is how it works. We can positive reframe. And inside of all of that, you can hear nurturing, which has many dimensions of being with oneself. But let's look at letting go. Okay, letting go is my favorite. We have these taglines for all of our skills. This one is set free what burdens me. Set it free what burdens me. It's like put it in the garbage can. Letting go comes not from trying to change things, but from a different way of seeing things. Letting go. And this is just my all-time favorite quote this week from Ajahn Chah, Thai Buddhist teacher, who says, if you let go a little, you will have a little happiness. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of happiness. And if you let go completely, you'll be completely happy. Isn't that just great? Thank you, Layla. I understand you have to drop off. No worries, so I'll be sending out everything afterwards. And I'm coming right up on the end of our time. I might go a couple of minutes over. My apologies for that. But this idea of letting go, I mean, really, it's about attachment, right? We get attached to something being in a certain way. We have an assumption about it. We get all tense and upset about it. But turns out we have to let in first in order to let go. We have to let things in. So let's look at the sequence. What does it take to let go? Letting in our awareness, our perception, letting that awareness and perception be, letting it be, accepting what is as it is. Okay, so I'm a perfectionist. Okay, I learned how to do it really well. No problem. It is what it is. It is who I am. And then, and only then, can I start to let it go and release my attachment to it, release my the binds that are holding me to it, the shame that I might feel. I mean, there's so much healing to be done. And that lets things come, lets me then be able to receive what's possible, which includes, of course, the release, the joy, the space, just to be me, to accept, to forgive, to be whole. So we'll close up with just a few slides on healing the wounds that bind us. We've already talked about the mindsets, which are so germane to this. But what really lifts us up? What allows us to be whole, to feel whole? And that takes us to the nurturing myself skill, which is always anchoring to self-love and self-compassion. Can I nurture myself by giving myself time, by giving myself food that nourishes me, by giving myself relationships that nourish me, and setting aside, having healthy boundaries with those relationships that don't nourish me? So much to this. And I wanted to close with a simple heart meditation, and then I'll tell you about a couple of dovetail resources. But let's end with another bell. And if you will, for a moment, just let yourself pause, come back to that centered space, the sense of self. Take a deep breath and let all of this in and let it settle wherever it might settle. Don't need to think about it so much in this moment. And just know that we all have absolutely impeccable reasons for being exactly who we are. Our strivings, our tendencies, our protective patterns, all were born with purpose. And just bring your awareness to the area around your heart. Maybe put your left hand on your heart and your right hand on your belly. And just take in the miracle of this being that you're holding, this precious being that lets you experience life. Honoring your dignity to be who you are, your authenticity to know what you know, and to have the freedom to speak that. And your capacity for seeing the miracles and the joy that exists in you and all around you. And with that, let's take a great big breath and know that loving ourselves is the key to it all. And it starts with beginning to liking ourselves, liking just any part of ourselves, and then following that path into complete sense of authenticity and knowing and being fully who we are. I offer myself as a resource to you. You can reach me at chuck@dovetaillearning.org, where you can download all of our free digital materials. We have trainings of all types. 6-week trainings, introductory trainings for organizations. We train certified coaches in this work. Many webinars available and other kinds of videos on our website. Just want to remind you that this is an open education resource, which means it's downloadable and free, and you can adapt it and use it. You can take anything that I'm giving you and use it. It's yours to use. The only stipulation in this license is that if you publish it in any way, you must share it also as an open education resource for anyone else to use, free, and it's part of the work and the stand we take for creating a world of kind and connected human beings. Thank you all so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to be able to share this, and I will be following this up with sending out the recording and the slide deck. Have a wonderful day.